Welcome to the Ditch the Struggle podcast. I'm your host, Alana Rosso. I'm a graphic designer turned career and success coach who knew I could do better, but kept falling short of where I wanted to go. But after years of exploring personal and career development, business, money mindset, and energy work, I'm here to tell you that yes, you can move from stuck and defeated to empowered and confident. Ready to dive in? Awesome. Together, let's ditch the struggle. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I first really want to thank everyone for tuning in. This will be episode number 50. I can't believe it's been a whole year. And I really appreciate all your messages, your DMs, and I just love that we've made it this far. I feel like it's a we because the encouragement from everyone has been really, really appreciated. And today we are going to go right back in time. I'm going back to a story from college that I often think about. And really what this episode is about is resolve. It is about noticing when we have stepped up. It is about going back to those moments where we had to dig really deep. And I would say I think of this story often as a time in my life where I had to dig deep, where things were so difficult, and I managed to accomplish something that was pretty great. And this is like kind of a common coaching technique is to, when we're going through something really difficult, is to think back to a time when we did manage to pull through. So I'm hoping that this will kind of trigger memories for you of times where you have done something that was pretty amazing during a really difficult time. And it is also about appreciating how far we've come. And yeah, let's just go right back to decades ago. So I went to the Ontario College of Art and Design. At the time, it was just Ontario College of Art. There was no design department officially, although I was going there for design. I actually did my first year at Concordia University. So we did 5 years of high school. I went there after graduated grade 13. And really my motivation for going to Montreal and going to Concordia was, maybe partly because they had a design program, but it was really about escaping my home. So I wanted out of my physical house so badly. The things with my parents had been so bad at the time. Their divorce was still going through. They were not in a good spot. I was having migraines all the time. Just living in that toxic house with two parents who just couldn't stand each other and were fighting all the time. I mean, the toll it was taking on me. I mean, how I made it through high school, and there was some bumpy times. I felt like it was a bit of a CBC after school special or ABC after school special. So when the time came to go to college, I was like, I'm heading out of Toronto. And two of my friends from high school were also going to go to the design program at Concordia. We had studied together at high school, and we had done our 3-year graphic design program together in high school. So I really came from, a design trained background really early on. I really appreciated my high school and did tons of illustration work as well and figure painting and all of that. So I had a great foundation. I mean, I graduated high school with a full portfolio. I didn't have to come up with something to present to the art schools because you needed a portfolio to get accepted. I already had tons of work. I had done so much and I loved design at the time. So there were times when I would be sitting in the room working on design pieces and graphic design, and so much of it was done by hand. This was not a lot of computer work. And the time would just fly by. And what's really interesting is that, and this kind of makes me sad and brings up a lot of grief, is that I don't know if I've ever been in the zone as much as I was in high school when it comes to being fully immersed. I mean, I can be immersed in stuff and time go by, but the love that I had for it in high school, I don't know if it's ever being replicated as an adult and doing it as a career, which is a whole episode in itself. There's a lot to unpack there, but I did love what I was doing. I loved what I was training at, and my skills were very obvious. My talents were very obvious. So it was not hard to get into art school or design school, but I went to Concordia first and realized pretty quickly on, I didn't really care for the program. It was much more fine art based, and I really wanted to get into typography and packaging and those kind of things. This was a lot more painting, abstract art. Just wasn't really my jam. Also, I really did not like Montreal. And to this day, I can appreciate Montreal as a city and it's beautiful, but every time I go there, I physically feel sick. I have like stomach pains. I'm upset. I'm unsettled. I'm ungrounded. I just do not like Montreal. And that's just a thing for me. So different places I go to, everyone, you have to notice this. Like some places you go to and you feel at home and you feel great. And some places you don't feel good. And I did not feel good there. So I really wanted to hightail it out of there. And I decided to go to OCAD for second, third, and fourth year. And I would be able to specialize more in graphic design and typography, which I really wanted. And also they had packaging design. So I head on over to OCAD. I'm now living with my dad. I think my parents had finally, like physically, they got divorced while I was away at college. So that was part of the reason why I was in Montreal. Let them figure out their shit because it was just awful. And I'm going to come back and start to rebuild my life, rebuild my career. And it was a challenge because there was still so much fallout from the pain of living with those parents that really took 15 years to divorce. So I was not feeling great mentally, physically, emotionally. This was the time when the anxiety attacks really kicked in. I tell this story in the trailer. I was outside my packaging design room when I was 19 and had my first full panic attack that I really remember. Now, looking back, I can see small little anxiety attacks in my childhood. But the really big ones, this was the time that it started. So I was also feeling really insecure about my design ability, my talents, because I went from being top of the class in high school and being, a great artist in elementary school. And now I'm surrounded by so many talented people and they're amazing at design. And there's so much more competition. And there's all these people trying to figure out their style and their way. That's such a huge thing when you're in art school or design school. What is your style? What is it going to be? And then there's those people who are such obvious superstars and they're just like rocking it and their work is on display all the time. And, the rest of us are kind of just trying to figure out a way. And I don't know if a lot of my best work was actually done at college because I was so insecure. I also had some awful instructors. I mean, I had some amazing ones, but for any of you graphic designers out there, I was in the class of Burton Kramer. And he's a pretty famous graphic designer. He designed the CBC logo. To this day, when I see the CBC logo, I want to barf. He taught a class with another instructor, Keith, I can't remember his last name. And oh my God, it was such an awful class and so much favoritism. And they were so old school. And it was just like this old boys club. And it was soul destroying. It was absolutely soul destroying. So that wasn't helping my confidence, my feelings about design. I didn't even know if I wanted to be a graphic designer at this point, but I was so on the track. And when you've spent so many years, especially even in high school, training for this, it's hard to imagine deviating. So I was kind of bumbling through. I did love the work still to a certain extent. I loved my typography classes. I remember one of the classes, I would probably spend 20, 30 hours a week just on one class. And I was already doing 8 classes a week. They were 3 hours each. I also worked part-time. Since high school. So I used to work in college 2 days a week and fit classes around and I worked my ass off. Now, this is still how I work today. If I'm stressed or trying to put things into control or feel in control, I will just double down on work, triple down. And I was living off coffee and caffeine, second cup coffee, Irish cream coffee. Oh my God. And then there was this thing that was called Jolt Cola. I don't think it exists anymore. It was like Red Bull before Red Bull. And I think the logo was some kind of cola. And what was their slogan was something like all the sugar, twice the caffeine, or twice the sugar, all the caffeine, something like that. I was drinking these. I was doing all-nighters. I loved doing all-nighters. I would just go to town on these classes. And so packaging was really something I wanted to focus in on. But I was feeling incredibly, incredibly insecure about my design skills. So crap about everything. I questioned everything I did. I didn't think I was good at all. I was watching all these people around me just rock it. I thought for sure I was just going to become bottom of the class. But there was this pull within me to achieve. And I knew I could do some of it and could be good at some of it. But I was in my own way. And there was a lot of self-sabotage going on, and which self-sabotage for me was showing up as not putting in 100%, maybe putting in 50%. which was totally the opposite of how my natural state. So that to me is really how self-sabotage will show up when I decide to like give up. And so this is the story about when I decided to not give up. And as I said, I look back on this moment because I was feeling so crappy, so hard on myself, so sad. I think I'd gone through a breakup as well, going into, I think, my second year or second or third year. I didn't think I had really any talent to speak of. And I wasn't getting much encouragement from my packaging design teacher at the time. So I had the same packaging design teacher for second and third year. Things changed for fourth year, and that's where I kind of have my triumphant moment. But a lot of the teachers there were very old school, very European, very Swiss style. And God help you, if you decided to type something flush right, you were literally going to fail. Like, no joke. So I like rules and regulations, but my goal is to always break them, right? So, and I think that's what every good graphic designer does. They know the rules and then they know when they can push them around. But I wasn't getting much encouragement from my packaging design teacher. And I would be in a freeze state a lot of the time. I would have a project to do. I would have sort of an idea of what I wanted to execute. And I would try, but then I would get so freaked out and so overwhelmed and I would kind of shut down. And I remember sometimes not being able to complete projects for packaging classes, which is so not my style. I was never someone who didn't execute or deliver. And to this day, I'm kind of known for being always someone who delivers their project on time. So I was really like, the only way I can describe it is I was crumbling. I even in either my second or third year, I ended up sick with mono. Just like, I feel like mono is something from like 1982. Like everyone had it in the 80s or something. And I was falling asleep in class. Like I got so sick. And so somehow I got mono, which is dubbed the sleeping sickness. And I, at one point, had to sleep like 18 hours a day. And then you would wake up still tired. It's the weirdest thing. So I got really sick. My body was basically shutting down. Like it could not handle any more stress. It was in PTSD from living at home. It was just like, I was financially stressed because the divorce had really financially affected my parents. So I was on OSAP loans. I was like trying to figure things out. And being in design was actually kind of expensive to do. You had to buy a lot of supplies. Like a lot of things were paper mock-ups. So you would create the packaging design and then you were mocking it up in 3D models. And you were just, there was a lot of things that cost a lot of money. And I kind of miss those days of making things like so tangibly and physically making things. So packaging was a really difficult time for me, like those years I was doing it. And the teacher wasn't very supportive. And I actually was getting very triggered by the teacher, which I've learned what that's all about. I just felt really on my own. There's no other way to describe it. My sister is a lot older than me. She was off and running, gone, doing her own life. My parents were fucked up. And I don't really have any other family. And eventually I ended up with a boyfriend in third year who was a great guy. So that helped, but things were really difficult, and I was having the anxiety attacks, having the panic attacks, all the things. So looking back, I'm kind of not sure how I made it. I did well in some of my courses, not well in some of them. Did not do well in Burton Kramer's class. I think he gave me a 60 so that I could just like pass. It was just like, if I think back, just very chaotic, very draining. So anyways, fourth year comes along, we get a new packaging design teacher. Our teacher decided the other one took a sabbatical, which I was thrilled about because as I said, I was getting very triggered by him. So a new teacher comes on and totally different vibe, and I really liked him. And it felt like kind of a fresh start, and there wasn't the baggage of the other instructor who had stressed me out for so many different reasons. So this was a new experience, and I was, trying my best to step up to the plate as I'm still working through all of my shit, right? So I wasn't feeling great still about what I could do and accomplish. Now, towards the end of fourth year, they start promoting a packaging design scholarship. And I believe one of the sponsors of it is the Packaging Association of Canada. I think they're called PAC. They still exist as far as I know. And you could win, I think it was like $2,500, and basically helped you get a leg in the door of the packaging design world. And this is where I thought I wanted to go. I was never interested in editorial design, which so interesting because I ended up doing quite a bit of editorial work later on, like magazine work, which I ended up loving. So I don't know. I just really avoided it in college. I didn't kind of get it. I didn't think I was interested. I only wanted to kind of do typography and packaging design. I hated advertising. And to this day, I've done some agency work. I think all advertising agencies are completely toxic as fuck. I just don't have any interest. Not to say that obviously I'm not doing advertising and doing promotional work, but agency life. And I'm going to have a whole episode about that actually, because there's just so much that's toxic about it. And even in the advertising design classes, I hated the vibe. There was just something smarmy about the way people were approaching things. There was a righteousness to it. And actually, it was the only time I ever dropped a class was, I think in third year, I dropped advertising. I just said to the instructor, this isn't for me. And he was like, you know what? It's good to walk away from something if you know it's not right for you. Which was interesting. I felt like a total failure. I felt like everyone else was the cool kids and I was just couldn't handle it. And again, I'm just feeling so insecure about where my talents are, what I wanted to do. I didn't even know if I wanted to do design. And I just was I was in the canoe that was going down the river of this path and I didn't know how to get off of it. I didn't have any energy to even think about getting off of it because I'm just trying to keep my life together. I'm just trying not to have an anxiety attack before or after class. And I would have them in class and just have to kind of leave. Yeah, it was really a challenging time. So the announcements go out for this packaging design scholarship, and I actually really wanted it. But I did not think I could do it. I did not think I deserved it. And I thought it was impossible. But secretly, I wanted it. I wanted a win. This is what it was all about for me. I needed a win. And been through a lot. I felt like I was bumbling through, didn't really know what I was doing, working ridiculously long hours, barely sleeping, living off awful coffee, and never really had a home to go to that felt in any way safe, to be honest. I mean, I really did spend a lot of time at the boyfriend's house, especially like third, fourth year. I just never really wanted to go home. Even though it was just my dad, I didn't want to be there. So let's say I'm not in an optimal state. I'm barely in a functional state. Do you know what it's like to be creative and knock things out of the park creatively when you're barely in a functional state? This is why your health, your nervous system, all of that is so important, especially for the creatives. You literally can't really do anything. However, sometimes when we're at those dark times and we have like nothing left in the tank, it is amazing how we can pull stuff out. And I still can do this. And just a month ago, I was like just going through so much, just so exhausted. But I had some pretty heavy creative deadlines for some work that I was doing. And I just dug deep again. I was like, I can do this. And I somehow managed some like just in 1 week, some amazing work. And I know it was amazing because the client was like, wow, you really knocked it out of the park. And I was like, yeah, I just knew I did because you get to know when you're really like hitting things right creatively and when it's like, oh my God, this is like barely passable. You just know, and it's okay. But I wanted this scholarship, but I didn't think I could do it. And I talked myself out of it. I was like, I'm not going to do it. And what you had to do was create a certain amount of pieces, and then you had to put it on display, almost like a packaging design fair, I guess. They would take over a room and you would put everything out. And it was projects that you'd worked on throughout the year, but I think you could do additional projects. And I talked myself out of this. I was like, I'm not doing it. I'm not even going to go for it, which is the self-sabotage piece. Not even trying. That's my self-sabotage coming out. Because if you don't try, you can't fail. And you don't have to worry about winning or losing because you've just already lost. So it's safer. I didn't want to put myself out there. It just felt like too much, too vulnerable, and too scary. And who did I think I was to try and win a scholarship in packaging design when I really hadn't done that amazing the couple years before? I had a couple good projects, but I was definitely not the shining star of packaging design in the school. There were other people that were. And so I just talked myself out of it. And I think months went on and I was like, I'm not going to try. It's safer not to try. And then I started to feel the fear of regret. It would creep in on me and I can just like feel this like I'm back there. It's so weird. I remember I was still living I was living with just my dad. My mom had moved into an apartment, but I was still living in our kind of it wasn't my childhood house, but we'd lived there for 10 years. And it was this kind of biggish house with just me and my dad, just kind of two ships passing in the night. And so I felt very lonely. And I remember wanting to go for it, but still terrified. And at some point, I did decide to go for it. I did decide to put myself into the running and do the work required, which was a shit ton. So as I said, we had to have a certain amount of projects on display. And that often meant redoing things that you had done that didn't really work. It meant a ton of physical mock-ups. So making, I remember one of them was a paint can, like designing a paint can, for like latex paint that you would see at Home Hardware or Home Depot. And it was all these other things. So what did I do? I made the decision to go for it. And it was so easy to not make the decision to do it. Like that was the easier way to go. Again, I'm tapped out. And something in me said to do this. So I went for it. What did that mean? That meant getting all the work together. And I locked myself into this bedroom. It was my mom's old bedroom. It was really kind of biggish. Put all my stuff on the ground and I started I was doing computer work in the day and I'm frantically making these mock-ups and putting these together. Now, at the time, I'm sure there's better ways to do it, but we used rubber cement to make physical mock-ups because it would really work. So you would have the cardboard mock-up and you would put rubber cement on both sides of whatever the folds are, the flaps, and it would be very permanent and would work really well. Well, that stuff is toxic. So I don't know what I was thinking, but I would work a lot in this room with no windows open and just like rubber cement, like wafting in the air. I don't know if, those brain cells have ever come back that I lost, and I would stay up till 2, 3 in the morning doing this. So I went in full tilt. And I did like my packaging design instructor. He was much more encouraging. And I think he saw some talent in me that fueled me. And this is like, oh my gosh, when you have a teacher who actually wants to see you succeed and actually cares about you, it is life transformative. And this is at the college level where a lot of times they just don't take much of an interest in you. That was my experience. There were so many students, everyone's just doing their thing. I think some of the teachers are there just to have a steady paycheck because a creative career is, not always the easiest. So some of the teachers didn't want to be there. But this guy, he wanted to be there. He was great. And I learned a ton from him. And so I did this marathon of work and got it together. And the time came to put everything on display and see what was going to happen. I made a great display. I can still remember it. I did like all these white circle cutouts. Each package was placed on a white circle and it was very clean. I understood how to make the display look, nice and effective and simple. And I felt really good that I did this. Like, I couldn't believe that I actually did this on top of my regular workload, on top of working part-time, and got all these pieces together to the caliber that I needed them to be to present them. So the competition comes up, people are judged. They had people from the Packaging Association of Canada judging it, and the teachers and all this stuff. So one day I walk into school and, oh no, I actually got a tip. I was going to say I walked into school and they had the winners posted, but I had been doing some other work with the packaging design teacher and a couple other students at his studio. I think he was like training on us some stuff. And he said, listen, I'm going to let you know that you did win the scholarship. So I was shocked. And so then, I was still shocked when I went into school and found out I won. And it's just one small thing. I'm not going to say that this scholarship changed the trajectory of my life. Not at all. Really not much came out of the scholarship. The point was that in a pretty dark time when I had very little energy, I decided that it was worth doing it. And it absolutely was worth doing it because it helped me feel like I'd accomplished something, that it was a win. I don't know how else to say it. I just needed that win after going through so much, not having any belief in my design ability. Not feeling like any teachers were really out there to support me. Not like it was necessarily a job, but it would have been nice. I try and rely on myself, but I'm kind of hyper independent. It can be exhausting to just only rely on yourself. And I decided that, that was that moment I was going to dig deep. And I won this scholarship. And what's really interesting is that they had like a ceremony during graduation there was different scholarships for different things in the program. And, I got some nice congratulations from the sponsors and friends. I never told my parents that I won this. I didn't tell anyone in my family. I'm kind of one of those people that if something good happens, I do kind of keep it to myself. I don't really broadcast things much. I know that's weird since I'm doing a podcast and I'm broadcasting things. I didn't tell anybody in my family that I won. And it's taken me years to understand why I didn't tell them because, and this is going to sound cray-cray, but it makes so much sense. I felt like my parents put me through so much hell with this whole divorce dynamic and things getting really ugly that if I won a scholarship or had something great happen to me, I then didn't get to say that they ruined my life. I really wanted to punish them is what it was. Like if I won and all this good stuff happened to me, then that meant that everything they put me through didn't really happen. It didn't really affect me. I was still able to, accomplish things and win things and do great. And so by me not doing great, I kind of got to punish them because they were putting me through this hell. I don't know if this makes any sense, but it makes total sense to me. So I was in the habit of really, it started in high school, never telling them anything good that happened in my life because I didn't want them to get the satisfaction. And I know this sounds so crazy of knowing that I was still having good things happen to me when I felt like I was living through such a hell. And, it was difficult because they didn't really ever acknowledge that things were really difficult at home. And I can appreciate now looking back as an adult that it was just so hard for them. And they were just trying to get by and make things work. And they were not compatible. Let's just put it that way. So I never told anybody the scholarship. I kept it to myself, but it was a win for me. And it did change things for me. I did have more confidence after that. I did start to believe in myself a little bit more. And I learned that important lesson of digging deep when it feels like impossible. It just felt like the most impossible thing in the world. I thought it was so far-fetched. I definitely thought there were people in the class that were way better at packaging design than me. But I put in 110% into the projects and at the time when it mattered. So that was like, okay, this is the time to just go for it and put everything into it and just go for it. So kind of happy ending that I got what I wanted and I accomplished. And I look back on this and I think, wow, how did I do that? And if you can do something like that, if you have a moment in your life where you had to just at all odds pull through, that is what makes you get through the next challenge, which will be coming up and comes up. And it is true that if you go through those really difficult times and make it through, it gets easier and easier. It's different, but you have that inner resolve in you, and cultivating that resolve, cultivating that resiliency, cultivating that ability to notice when you are about to self-sabotage and stopping yourself. Like, that's really what this was all about for me. Like, okay, this is when I want to just quit and throw in the towel and just like feel sorry for myself and have a pity party. That's the self-sabotage kicking in. So from today's story, I hope you think back, because I know you absolutely have done things that were so hard and you didn't think you would get through them. And then you're going to face things like that again. So if you can look back and really train yourself to dig deep and find that resolve, even when you don't want to, it's just so much easier to give up. It's so much easier to give up. We can't give up. We just cannot give up. As hard as it is, you can't. Like, you can't. That's the message from today. You can't give up. Push through. It's not to say that everything I did after that was like easy or, like I landed a dream job I did land a job, but that was from randomly meeting someone on the street. I talk about that in another episode, but It's not like things magically fall into place, but it was a pivotal moment. And these are those times where you change as a person. And I think you changed the trajectory of your life, actually. And in that moment, I think I did for the better. Take care, guys. Thank you for joining me today on Ditch the Struggle. You showing up here means so much to me. To dig deeper into the topics discussed today and to learn about my work, visit alanarosa.com. And don't forget to download your free resources while you're there. And if this episode resonated with you, please share with others who also want to ditch the struggle. Go ahead and subscribe to the podcast, leave a rating and a review, and let me know what you'd like to see more of on this podcast. And before I go, I want to leave you with my 3 favorite ways to ditch the struggle. Be your own best advocate, take baby steps for the win, and forget about a linear career path. It's overrated and you are doing just fine. See you next time.